ערב טוב, it's ראש חודש חשבון, יום שלישי, יום שלישי, יום רביעי. ראש חודש is a special day, the beginning of the month, the Jewish calendar month, and it's a day that there are additional lights of spirituality in the world. The light of the moon. The moon now is a full moon. Is now you can't see the moon. It's a new moon, beginning a new moon. The new moon begins to grow, and the day of Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of a new moon, a new light for Israel and for the whole world. And on this day, in the Holy Temple, there was special sacrifices for the new month sacrifice. In the synagogues today, in the morning will be added a special prayer in the morning service called Musaf. This is in place of the new month's sacrifice. Prayer has replaced sacrifice. Until the temple is rebuilt, maybe it will continue even after. The moon has no light of its own, and it will slowly receive light day to day until the middle of the month, when it will be a full moon. So there is a giver of light, which is the sun, and a receiver of light, which is the moon. In the same way, God is the giver of life, the source of light, called the Infinite One, the infinite light. And we on earth are the receivers of life. Life is a gift. We have to make a vessel to receive the life that God gives us. And this vessel is the vessel of religion. Religion prepares people, the children of man, to receive the life and light of God, that they should be productive and lead eventually to peace. Being peace between heaven and earth, peace between God and man, peace between man and man, peace in the home, and peace in business and between nations. This is the goal of life. But life has to start from somewhere. And the Torah teaches that it started in the Garden of Eden. Adam was single in the Garden of Eden, a man alone, with God, but alone, as far as the only man on earth. The Torah gives the advice for all of mankind, the children of God on earth, to leave your father and mother and to get married to make a family. In this way, the earth becomes populated and we make a dwelling place for God on earth. Everything began with Adam, a celibate. He was all alone. He had no desire for a woman. However, God fought against his desire only for spiritual unity, because spiritual unity is the unity of male and female spiritual attributes called the father and mother of life, the two letters of God's name, Yud and K. But in God's name, there is also another two letters, which is Vav K. The whole name is Yud K, Vav K. And Vav K is called the son and the daughter. So there is the father and the mother of all life, and their unity. They are an eternal unity. They are never separated. And then there is the son and the daughter, the lower level of unity between the son and the daughter, which requires sanctification through religion. The father and mother are an eternal unity, and they're forever one. The son and the daughter need to be united through a covenant, the covenant of God, which is religion. And this is the way it was. Adam was alone in the Garden of Eden, and he was tricked by the snake and his wife, pressured by them to leave the Garden of Eden and go to work to build for God a dwelling place in the world. The Garden of Eden is a place of eternal peace. The world is for man a test of faith, a test of righteousness. After Adam and Eve were together, they had children, and there was a disagreement or jealousy between the first two children, which was Cain and Abel. They both offered sacrifices to God. They believed in God. God favored the sacrifice of Abel, and Cain was jealous, and he killed Abel. It was the first tragedy of the world. Cain continued to live and continued to populate the world, and was born then Seth, righteous man, and was born then Enosh. Later, at the time of Enosh, it says that people began to worship God in the way of mercy. But this was not the purpose of creation. The purpose of Adam leaving the Garden of Eden was to populate the world and build a dwelling place for God in the world. Not with the attribute of mercy, but with the attribute of justice. Also, Moses at Mount Sinai, he was the fourth of the forefathers. There was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses was the fourth, and was revealed at Mount Sinai the attribute of mercy, which was hidden under the thorns and thistles of life, the attribute of mercy being the light of the Garden of Eden. Again, there was opposition to the revelation of the attribute of God as mercy, his attribute of the divine letters Yud and K, the first two letters, and Vav. And this opposition was felt when, at the bottom of the mountain, Jewish people were building a golden calf. There was opposition to Judaism being a religion with Moses as their Godhead. Moses being the attribute of mercy. He would be the Godhead. And they built this golden calf, not a statue of Moses, but the statue of an animal, a calf. Moses came down from the mountain with tablets which were written by God, tablets which had in them mercy and freedom. And he broke these tablets because he saw that it was not the time to reveal the universal faith. The universal faith would being to unite mercy and justice together, freedom together with religion. So after Moses broke the tablets, he went up to the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, and God said, I wanted to make for you a nation with you as its Godhead. But Moses said, no, make the Jewish people a nation devoted towards the survival of the memory of the forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This God had already promised to the forefathers. So God had to keep his promise. Moses at the go at the burning bush. God told them, take off your shoes. And that was symbolic that God said, from now on, you have to be celibate, separate from your wife, in order to receive my private instructions to you, divine prophecy of the highest level. And then to go into Egypt and to take the Jews out of Egypt with 10 plagues, splitting of the Red Sea, fighting a war with Amalek, and then eventually will be revealed at Mount Sinai the name of God, which is the whole name of God, that is his 4 letters. And that was fulfilled at Mount Sinai. But the desire of God was to have a dwelling place on earth, and that the Jewish people should be the first religion in the world, the first biblical nation on earth. And to have a biblical nation, you need to build a tabernacle. And Moses gave instructions to his students. Bezalel was the one that he gave the instructions to build the tabernacle. And Ahaliov helped him. They were a team. And they built the tabernacle according to the instructions of Moses. The tabernacle was they would carry with them in the wilderness. They had 42 journeys in the wilderness. It was not placed in one place. And the foundation of the tabernacle was Moses, separate from the Jewish nation, residing separately in a tent outside the camp. The face of Moses glowed, and when he came out of the tent, he had to put on a veil because his face glowed, and the people would fear him, and so he had to wear this veil. Moses lived in the wilderness 40 years. He had special students who had been connected to him, mostly Levites, and they were connected to the universal faith. The other side of the camp was the national religious side of the camp. Aaron was the leader. He was the high priest who served in the temple. And after 40 years, the generation of the wilderness passed away. They had been living on a high plane of spirituality, receiving bread from heaven. Their clothes didn't wither. They drank from a well that was in the merit of Miriam, and there was a cloud of glory that followed them, protected them in the merit of Aaron. When Aaron died, the cloud of glory continued in the merit of Moses. And Miriam died, hid the water that got through the merit of Moses. Moses was included in him all the 3 levels of faith. He was the perfect saint. And in the wilderness, he was their king. He was their Godhead, because he was separate from the camp in the old Moed. But then when they went into Israel, he gave over his teachings to Joshua to enter the land with the children of Israel, to build a dwelling place for God in the land of Israel, the biblical nation of Israel, and to eventually conquer the land and reach Jerusalem and build there a holy temple. When they would reach Jerusalem, there would no longer be a need for the tabernacle, the portable tabernacle, anymore. But they would build a house in Jerusalem for God with stones. It took time. In the meantime, before they finally came to Jerusalem to build the Holy Temple, which was at the time of King Saul and then King David, there was freedom. The people had religion, but they also had freedom. They had a connection to Moses, who was the father of mercy. And they had the connection of Moses through Joshua, who was he's called Ben Nun, the son of 50, which is the son of mercy. Mercy being the 50th gate. After Joshua came Shoftim. We have a book in Torah called Shoftim. Shoftim, the land was distributed in 12 tribes, and there was amongst the people a battle between them for freedom. Freedom remained from the time the Jews were in the wilderness, the aspect of mercy, but the direction that they were given by Moses was to change over mercy to justice. But it had not yet been completed. This was not completed until they established the kingship of Israel in Jerusalem and they built the temple. So they were still allowed to have altars throughout the country, and there was the tabernacle in Shiloh, and also the people were allowed to take for themselves a woman out of wedlock called a pelegish. There's a story in Shoftim of a man who had a pelegish. They were not married. Pelegish is like a girlfriend, but it's sanctified. The woman is not a nida. She is sanctifies herself from menstrual blood and goes to the mikveh. But a pelegish is not yet considered to be that they are married. So therefore, when they separate, they don't need a divorce. This is explained in the Talmud. This man and woman were traveling in the section of Israel of Benjamin. These were ultra Orthodox Jews. The section of Israel of Benjamin was a section where the temple was built. And the people there looked down on this relationship between this man and this woman. They molested her, and then she was cut up, and there was a war in Israel between the tribes. And as a result, the tribes were not allowed to marry with people with women and men from the tribe of Benjamin. There was still freedom for people to choose the one that they loved. And if it wasn't exactly suitable to marry her, they can be together. Anyway, it took over 400 years until the land was completely conquered at the time of King David. And the son of King David, Solomon, built the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. During these years, there was left over the remnants of freedom and mercy from the generation of the wilderness through the prophets. When they got to Jerusalem, King David made then a much stricter law prohibiting building altars outside of Jerusalem. This was written in the Torah that this would eventually be there, have to be done in order to build a kingship for God in Israel. And justice would completely replace mercy. There'll be no freedom. It will be a theocracy. And so it was. There was in Israel a king, and there was a holy temple, priests. But this concept of Godhead, which was Moses in the wilderness, was forbidden for anyone to connect to God in this way through the Godhead. Through Moses, the connection of God through Moses was replaced completely through the connection of God through the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. In the Holy Temple of Jerusalem, which was built on the rock of faith, which is called Evan Shtia. It's in that place where is today the Mosque of the Arab Al-Aqsa. In this place, there was the temple around it, the walls of Jerusalem around it, and the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies was placed the 2 tablets of Moses. And no one was allowed to go into this Holy of Holies except for the high priest on the holiday of Yom Kippur, the high holy day. The Holy of Holies, we are told in the Zohar, was the corresponded to the eye of mercy, which is sometimes called the third eye. This is the source of mercy, which comes down through the level of Keter, of crown, supernal crown. It comes down through 10 emanations, and the world is created through these 10 emanations. Its source is in the supernal crown, the eye of mercy. In Israel, the biblical nation, the 10 tablets, the tablets of the 10 commandments, had the 10 commandments to establish in Israel the nation of God and a theocracy. Justice would be principle, and mercy, the attribute of God of mercy, now would be hidden. So there was no freedom. The only freedom in the biblical nation of Israel was to learn the law and to sacrifice your life for the nation. The Jews at the time, when they had the Holy Temple and there was the light of God in the Holy Temple, the Holy of Holies, their connection to God was through the light of God in the Holy Temple, and the connection to God was through simple faith in God. They were not connecting to God through prophecy, directly to God through the attribute of mercy, a connection to God through Moses as the Godhead or prophet of Israel, who is eternal, an eternal saint. Because Moses went up into the mountain of Har Novo before he died. His grave was not known where it was. And the Zohar and the teachings of the Lubavitcher rabbi is that this place where Moses was passed away, called Navo, is connected to the 50th gate of mercy, where there is eternal life. But that was not taught in the biblical nation of Israel. The biblical nation of Israel, it was forbidden to think in this direction, but to connect to God only through the Holy Temple and through learning the Torah and keeping the commandments. Even prayer was limited to words that they were allowed to say, and they were not allowed to pray to God from their hearts in their own words, as was instructed by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in the last generation, to do what's called despotatus, to pray to God in your own words. There are different problems with praying to God in your own words, that people have to learn how to pray. And the only ones who really could pray to God in their own words in the time of the biblical nation of Israel were the prophets. They were prophets. And these prophets connected to God through prayer. There was still a connection to mercy by the prophets. But the prophets became less and less as the nation continued, or was more revered, and more respect was given to Torah scholarship, learning the Torah and understanding the words of the Torah than prophecy. Prophecy is connected to the Torah of the divine chariot, in which there is the universal faith and religion. But in the biblical nation of Israel, the connection to God was only through religion. It was against the universal faith. There was rebellion in the camp of Israel right after the temple was built by Solomon, and the nation was split into two. Through a rebellion, there was the nation of Israel and the nation of Judah. The cause of this was that the universal faith had been suppressed, and the people wanted the universal faith. So they had to make their own nation. The universal faith was dangerous for the survival of the Jewish people, especially when the temple would eventually be destroyed. Because the nation of Israel could only survive through the law of Moses and through suppressing all aspects of universal faith. The temple was destroyed after 400 years. There were 70 years of exile in Babylon, and a segment of the Jews came back to Israel to build the temple for another 400 years. And there was also Jews living in Babylon, Jews living in Egypt. The Romans eventually destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. The temple being, according to the law of Moses, the only connection to God of the Jewish people. And it's even today, according to Jewish law, that the Jewish people have to rebuild the temple and return this connection to God through the temple. There is the king of Israel, but he's not a Godhead. He dies, and then they appoint another king until they didn't have another king in the time of the second temple. And there is the Torah scribes and scholars that teach the law to the people, teach the Torah to the people, learning of the Talmud, learning of the Mishnah, learning of Jewish law, until about 800 years ago was revealed the Zohar in Spain. The Zohar was a new light of spirituality, but the Zohar included in it also the side of spirituality of justice and the side of spirituality of mercy. While through all the generations, the side of spirituality of mercy was suppressed. A Jew could be able to connect to God through love by connecting to God through the attribute of mercy, while through fear, God is distant, and the connection is through fear of God. The God is through fear of God, his attribute of justice. That is what Isaiah said, near and far. These are two different connections to God. Near is through mercy, far is through justice. God is in heaven and revered and feared, and God is in the heart of man, in the breath that a man has. It is in life and the whole of life, the creator of life. This is the connection of God through mercy. Isaiah lived at the time of the first temple, and he proselytized that there will be someday a new law, and that this new law will be connecting to God in a higher level, connecting to God through mercy and justice together. And this was also the teachings of other prophets, including Jeremiah, the last prophet before the temple was destroyed. Now the Zohar is a very mysterious book of truth. Zohar is truth. The Torah of Moses is truth. And Moses is truth. And this is what the Zohar is teaching. Not only is the Torah truth, but also Moses is truth. And there is in the Zohar two connections to God, one through the Torah, through the attribute of justice. The second connection to God is through Adam in the Garden of Eden before the sin, through the attribute of mercy. So a Jew, according to the Zohar, can reach God in both ways. But the traditional way is for Jews to connect to God through the learning of Torah, that is, the learning of the Talmud, the learning of the Jewish law. But the Zohar added the connection of God through deep spirituality, which in it is through the name of God of 4 letters, which is the name of God of mercy, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And it begins with the letter Yud, the letter Yud being separate from the creation, from the world. And this was Adam before the sin. The Zohar gives advice. It says that we need in the world, because of the sufferings that we have experienced in life, we need in the world a man who is the connection of God for mankind through Adam. And this man has to be celibate. This teaching was not accepted by Torah scholars. Even though the Zohar was accepted, this particular teaching of the Zohar was not accepted. And the Torah scholars, they are completely against a Godhead, a connection to God through Adam and the Garden of Eden. Because the Torah says that a man should leave his father and mother and get married. So Jews, according to Jewish law, there's no place for there to be a celibate. But we see, the Zohar explains that Moses, at the burning bush, was told to take off his shoe. That he was this level of mercy in the Jewish camp. And he lived separately from the Jewish people in the wilderness. And his face was glowed with light. It says that the tabernacle was on two levels. One connecting to the earth for sacrifice, the second level connecting to God for Moses. But the Holy Temple in Jerusalem had only one connection of God to God, that was through the Holy Temple. So Judaism still connects to God only through the law and the Holy Temple. And Jews pray the temple should be rebuilt soon in our days, and that we should be returned to the Torah nation as it was in the times of David, King David. In the middle of history, there was a rebellion in Judaism for freedom, and was revealed the Messiah of freedom, which became the religion Christianity. Christianity began as a movement against religion for faith alone, universal faith, but it was later on became a national religion, the religion of Rome. Religion and the universal faith are two lights, two separate lights. One is mercy and one is justice. The light of mercy cannot be a religion. So Christianity eventually had its downfall. Rome was the capital of the world, and today is left over a little teeny small part of Rome, which is called the Vatican. But in the Vatican, there is a holy saint who is Pope Francis today, who is the connection for the world to God through the attribute of mercy, the universal faith. But he has broken off from the old tradition that was in the church. And he recently got sick, and he had colon operation. And his words were that he's happy to get better, but he knows that many people prayed that he should die. Today in France, there is opposition to atrocities that were made by the church in France. In Canada, they discovered graves of children. Religion is today being under a lot of pressure. Religion is important to build families, but today there is an emphasis on freedom, and religion suppresses freedom. Religion is in religion is revealed the attribute of God called justice. And in Judaism, even though mercy was revealed at Mount Sinai, the Zohar says that the whole process of receiving the second tablets were of the covenant were to replace mercy with justice, and eventually mercy was replaced by justice when it was established the temple in Jerusalem. They were not allowed to make any other altars throughout the nation, and any sort of natural love between man and woman had to be authorized through the rabbinical courts, that there had to be marriage in the proper way, and people that were born from incense were called bastards or mamzerim, and they were not allowed to marry in the nation. This is in the law, and in the law it says it shall continue this way and never be changed. The law of each religion which came after Judaism has in it the same statute, that this is the law of their master, the law of God, and can never be changed. This is in Christianity, and in Islam it claims that Muhammad is the last prophet, and his words replace the words of Moses and the words of Jesus. But was revealed in the world the universal faith through the religion of Baha'i, through a new prophet in the Ottoman Empire. Judaism was revealed the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, who was instructed to bring the Messiah through teaching esoteric teachings of the Torah. A new direction, esoteric teachings of the Kabbalah, include in it the truth that there are two sides to spirituality. There is mercy and justice. While in the law it is taught that justice of God is primary to mercy. So there are some Jews today that by them the universal faith is primary to religion. But nevertheless, Torah scholars today continue. They accept that there is the universal faith. There is what I have taught here that is taught in the Zohar, but they remain that first comes the national religion before universal faith. And this is where we are today. In this world, there is a man who is for the world a connection to the universal faith in the Vatican, that he is preaching unity between religions, and the Zohar says that is against celibacy, that people should make families and follow according to religion. But there's a place for one or two great saints in the world to be separate from the world and removed from the world, that they all represent the universal faith. The Lubavitcher rabbi, studying the Zohar and Kabbalah, added onto Judaism the Zohar and the Kabbalah, and he revealed in Judaism the Messiah, the son of David, who is eternal. The Messiah, the son of David, according to Jewish law, lives and he dies like any other man. So this proclamation of Hasidism, the Lubavitch Hasidism, the Rebbe is still alive even 25 years after his death, is connected to the universal faith. But the Rebbe himself was taught that's not the way for a Jewish man to be celibate, and the Rebbe was a married man. But there is a place in the world where there are celibates. They are serving God and not getting married. This is in the Vatican today. And also in India, there are certain gurus that do not get married. Buddhists, they don't get married. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, for Jews, we have to get married. So it could be that a Jew might have to connect with Pope Francis if he needs the universal faith. Because in Judaism, there is connection to God through the Holy Temple today. And the universal faith is suppressed. But there's also the connection of God in Judaism today through the Messiah, the son of David, who was revealed as the Lubavitcher Rabbi. And there's a connection to God for all of mankind today through the Jewish Messiah, who teaches people to be righteous and follow the 7 commandments of Noah. That these are the general instructions to God for all of mankind. So there are actually 2 sides of spirituality, the side of mercy and the side of justice. The side of mercy is in heaven. It's not on earth. There's only a connection to mercy for one man. That man was Moses, who died in the wilderness, and today he has resurrected with the other prophets of all the religions to that the world should have in it a unity between the universal grace and mercy and freedom and religion. But the principal aspect of Judaism today is following the law, and there's no freedom, there's no redemption, no geula, except through that they should be revealed the Holy Temple again. And the Zohar accepts that. The Zohar says the Holy Temple will be revealed and come down from heaven with the Messiah that includes in him both the universal faith and the Messiah, the son of David. He will come down with the temple on a chariot, and then there will be only peace and only good, and everyone will know God and know that God is the King of the universe. That in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and God is one, and only God is one. There's 2 messiahs, but God is only one God. That is the truth that is revealed through the Zohar. There's one God, 2 messiahs. No one can be able to claim God and limit him, that he's free and he's one. And we have to love God with all our heart, all our soul, and all our might. And there should be peace and harmony in the world. Amen.